No, Dublin. That was the biggest one. But before that, the guy who was getting all of the criticism from the press in such a manner as Martin and Billy did there was Johnny Ray. He was laying down and screwing the microphone stand 15 years beforehand in America. So, I mean, I don't know why people took such umbrage, because, I mean, I was a massive Johnny Ray fan, and I saw him many, many times, and I saw him do all sorts of things that we would never have dreamt of doing. So, I don't know that.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think Vince is right, actually, because, I mean, well, the bit in the Scotland was true. I mean, the guy was going to punch him because he was wiggling his ass, as he said. But the thing is, I don't understand what they were on about anyway, because it wasn't sort of, I mean, there's worse things now, for God's sake, you know. But I must say, just before I must say one thing. What pees me off is people seem to think that music started when the Beatles came in. You know, it's like you've talked Beatles, yeah, it's true, it's all they talk about. You know, so what? I remember when I was with Billy in Liverpool, they used to come round and beg me to go and meet Billy when they were still the Gold Silver Beatles or something. Silver Beatles were there. And they used to beg, please, can you come and take me in to see Billy? And people seem to think music started when the Beatles came along. In fact, to be honest, I honestly think they killed a lot of people's careers. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
No, they didn't kill yours, Clem, did they, mate?
Well,
Yours did,
they killed me. It's true. No, but I mean, I was different because I suddenly became a session musician. As somebody said, the quietest drummer in the world. Played on loads of records, nobody knew who I was anyway. Not that I'm bothered, but there you go.
I think with Billy, the most amazing thing was that you hear people butter up people through life and say, oh, he was a nice guy. But Billy genuinely was quite an amazing character in terms of being such a nice guy. And in latter years, in the 70s, when his ill health had begun to sort of really take over for him, I was approached by a promoter who asked me if I would support Billy on a national tour. And this was the early 70s, and I'd just got a band together called the Clockwork Toys, who were a great band, and I was having a really good time with all the big clubs, the Baileys, and all the Fiestas, and all those clubs, and I was working like crazy. And I said, I'd love to work with Billy. Now, there's an interesting story about one of Billy's songs, which is It's Only Make Believe. I first saw that performed by Conway Twitty on the Oh Boy show. I wasn't on the actual show, but I was there with Mart when Conway Twitty was on, and I saw him sing it. And it was an amazing song, and I loved it. Now, my former life, I was a chorister, and I used to have quite a powerful voice for my years. And in view of the fact that I had pneumonia 6 times, between the age of being born and 6 years of age, I shouldn't have really had a powerful pair of lungs, but I did. And this song, I sang it once, and it really suited me. I put it in the act, it did really, really well. And it was my saving grace on many occasions. Because if I was struggling with an audience who probably thought I was rubbish, or something such as that, as soon as I put It's Only Make Believe in, I got them. And it really was a saving grace. Now, Billy and I were doing a summer season together in 1960 at the Presadio Pier, Great Yarmouth. I was still, or I was at that time more than ever, I never got on with parts, not like some of the other lads did, but I just couldn't tolerate it. And I knew he was ripping me off, he did some horrible things to me, or tried to. But I went along with it because my father had signed the contract. But what happened was, in Yarmouth, with Billy, he was topping the bill, I was second to top, and I was doing It's Only Make Believe. And it went so well that some nights I had to sing it 3 times. And Bill was always saying to me, Vinny, why don't you get Larry to record it? Now, Larry was stopping me doing a lot of things, and recording was one of them. So I said, no. He said, well, I'm going to ask him. So he asked Larry if I could record It's Only Make Believe. And Larry said, oh, no, it's too soon after Conway Twitty's or Glenn Campbell, and then recorded it next. So that was that. And then Billy recorded it, of course, 2 or 3 years later. I had a big hit with it, and it was great. Now, this tour comes along in the early 70s. The guy approached me. He said, would you do the tour with Billy? I said, I'd love to do it, obviously, more than anything. But we're going to have a problem. He said, what's that? I said, It's Only Make Believe. It's a big one for Billy. He'd had a hit with it. I hadn't had a hit, although it was on the B-side of a record that did well. And he said, oh, I said, we'll sort that out. But for me, it wasn't just a question of sorting it out, because it was my bread and butter, that song, on many occasions. And it would put me up with the others. So I thought, well, what do I do? So I phoned Bill, and I said, what are we going to do about Make Believe? He said, well, you'll do it. I said, well, I can't do it. You've had a hit with it. He said, oh, no. He said, I'm not going to sing it on the same bill as you. So you've got to, people. And what will happen is, I will get the Billy Fury fans on my back, because I did it, and you didn't. And I couldn't do without that. He said, okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do a duet. And that's what we were going to do. And sadly, he was rushed into hospital about 2 weeks before the tour. It was a 25-day tour, and he had big valves inserted into his heart, so the tour didn't take place. But that was the sort of guy he was. Most artists would have said, well, it's tough, mate, you know, it's my hit, so I'm going to sing it, not Bill. He said, no, Al. He said, we'll share it.
That is Billy. Really, I mean, when I was with Billy, we were originally called the Beat Boys, and I'll tell you a story. We changed the name to the Blue Flames. Does anybody know why we were called the Blue Flames? We were doing a tour of Scotland at Hogmanay over the New Year, and you have to excuse me, folks, but it was freezing cold. We're in the van. In fact, it was so cold inside the van, the windows were steamed up and turned to ice. So we decided to try and keep warm. We were lighting farts. Now, I don't know if you know, but they are Blue Flames. And that's how Billy Fury and the Blue Flames came down. Just a little. That's true. But getting back to what Vince said about Billy, I mean, Billy was great because he wasn't Billy Fury and us. Even when with the tornadoes, it was different. This was in the end of the 50s when I was first with him. It was Billy Fury and the guys, and he treated us like he was one of the lads. I mean, there was one. I think it was on the same tour as that we were staying in a hotel for once. In actual fact, Larry actually paid for a hotel for once. That was a shock. And we actually took Billy out. We all got a bit inebriated, as you do after a show. And we got Billy in his bed with the mattress and actually took it down and put him in the lift. Just about 2 o'clock in the morning. So you can imagine, next morning, Billy was fast asleep, all the workers going out to work, you know, and they open the lift and there's Billy, fast asleep, in the lift. And that is true as well, but that was Billy. And Billy thought it was great, I mean, he thought it was a great gag, you know. But that was Billy, he was one of the guys, it wasn't him and us, it was, we were all together. And I still reiterate that the fact is Billy, I don't think he, you know, in the music business itself, they've given him, I mean, they talk about Cliff, yeah. To me, I mean, I was with Cliff for 2.5 years. Billy was a better singer than Cliff, to be honest.
That's a performer.
As a performer, you know, he really was. You know, I was, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking Cliff because I was with him 2.5 years and I've got a lot of time for him, but I still think one of the periods of my life working with Billy was great because he was such a nice guy, you know, he was friendly, we used to have some great laughs with him, you know, there's not him and us, it was, we were a team, and that's what I think was a big success of Billy at that time. But again, why do people seem to think that music started with the Beatles, for God's sake, you know? Can't somebody tell them?
Get out your brand, Fab. It's
sorry,
all right, that's history.
No, it's true. It's history. I know, that's the problem.
Oh God, stories about Billy could go on forever. We did used to go, when we got back into town doing gigs, we'd get back into town and we'd probably have no money because we hadn't been paid for a few weeks or months. And we did used to borrow Larry's car without his knowing and drive around, and we used to drive down to Southend a lot because there was a brand new bowling. Do you come from Southend? Yeah. Oh really? There used to be a bowling alley on the pier.
That's
right. Right? And it was this, yeah, and it was one of the first ones ever, and they used to do all-night bowling. Yeah. And they'd do what they call breakfast bowling. And Billy and I go down, and we get there about 5:30 in the morning, and we do about 4 or 5 games of bowling, and then they give us a free breakfast. And I even remember the manager's name. His name was Billy Bingham. And I met him about 25, 30 years later when I was in Durban in South Africa, working there for 2 months. in Cabaret, and he told me the stories, and he said, you'd be amazed, looking back on it, the amount of people that used to turn up at 6 o'clock in the morning in the hope of seeing Billy. And so they were coming in and watch us eating breakfast. But Billy, his animals, he's the same as me, I love animals, I absolutely love them. And we had a common interest there. And because we were, you see, a lot of people don't realise that with Billy and I, we were the only two artists that Larry had who both lived with him. All the other artists lived with their families. So when Marty, Dickie, Duffy, Joe, Tommy, Colin, when they finished a gig, they went home. We went back to Larry's. And we were subjected to some really weird situations. Seriously, I mean, you'd walk into the flat, and as you went, you'd probably seen that film from the Panorama where it shows you a mat with LMP on it and some shoes walking across wrinkle pickers. Well, they're my shoes, they're grey, and LMP stands for Lawrence Morris Palms. And he used to go out and he used to cruise around Trafalgar Square and the West End, picking up matlows and guardsmen and so forth. And he'd bring them back, and when you walked in, you'd go through the front door, and there'd be there was a rack there where you could put hats on, and then there was the hooks where you could put the coats. And some nights you'd go in, they'd have 4 or 5 guys in there. But what he used to do to pick them up, when he picked them up, he would say, "I'm Tommy Steele's manager, you know." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Really?" "Oh, no, you're not." He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'll get you to meet him." And he used to phone Tommy up at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and say, "Tommy, come to my flat immediately." This was in the early days. And Tommy would go, and one night Tommy told me, and I didn't get on well with Tommy, not that he was different. But, calm down, blood pressure. And Tommy walked into the apartment, and there was Larry on the couch with a couple of these matlows, and Larry said to Tommy, "Oh, Tommy, come in, please. I'd like you to meet a couple of friends of mine." "What were your names?" Of course, he didn't know the name. And that was the sort of thing we had to deal with. But Billy and I had it much worse in that if I wanted to phone home, I couldn't. Parents didn't have a phone. If Billy wanted to phone home, he couldn't. And we had to wait until a certain time and phone our parents in a phone box. And that's what we did. That's how we kept in touch. And it wasn't good, because if Larry says, "Oh, you're going to do this," all the other guys could go home and discuss it with their folks and decide whether they were going to do it, if there was an option. Billy and I couldn't, and we used to have a lot of problems because of that. But it's the thing that people didn't know aware of, except Billy and I. But one thing we did used to do, we used to get to a lot of pranks in Larry's flat, a lot of pranks. And we used to play scale strips on his marble top, and we used to play trains on his carpet. We used to do all sorts of things which we bored. Billy was very fond of air rifles. He'd often, on this was a passage about 40 feet long, with a kitchen, a bathroom, a bedroom, and then my bedroom was at the end, then Larry's was in the corner, then there was another bedroom, then a bar. And when I came out of mine one night, Billy's laying there with an air rifle, and every time I opened the door, it was firing at me. And that's the sort of stuff. But the best prank we ever played was, Larry had this massive stereo, like that. Remember the old stereos, records either side and the turntable in the middle. And Larry used to have some great stuff he got from America. It used to be stuff people sent him. Toy OK for Tommy or Marty, some for me. And he had these great records. And right next to it was a door. Right next to the stereo was a door that took you out onto a balcony overlooking Gloucester Road. And we used to be out there, and Billy started taking the records out, and there used to be buses going backwards and forwards along that road. And he used to throw, what I did as well, the records and see if we could get to land on top of the double-decker bus. We used to do points, and the extra points you got, the best points, was to get them onto the roof of the buildings opposite the other side of the road. And we did all sorts of stuff like that, but just one, before I give back to Flanagan, what I remember, Billy loved animals so much we had a dog called Buster, a boxer, We saw this, some photos of it. And Buster was a lovely dog, he was a boxer. And we were pals with Diana Dawes, Billy more so than me. And we used to take Buster for a walk up to the park, Hyde Park, which was just at the end of the road, probably 200 or 300 yards. And once we got into the park, Billy would ask me to look after his dog for a bit, and he'd come back with Diana Dawes' dog. And he'd say, we'll look after both the dogs, I'll be back in half an hour.
Well, what was he going to do then?
I don't know. He was looking for another dog. All he got was a bitch.
Actually, anybody want any questions, please? Yes.
What age was Billy when he died?
Sorry?
What age was he when he died?
43.
43, yeah.
He was born April 17th, 40, and I was June 4th, 40. He was 6 weeks older than me.
So there's a lady at the
Lady
back.
at the back.
Yeah?
I'm sorry, I've got a question for Clem and one for Vince.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Clem, you've appeared on many #1 hits.
Yeah.
Probably, and you've never been recognised for that, which is
I was a musical nanny.
shameful.
That's all.
But what is, out of all the #1s you've played on, what is your favourite?
That's a good question. I haven't got a clue, to be honest. I mean, it's shaking all over, I think, probably.
Yes.
Because that was my very first #1, so.
Yeah.
And it was supposedly a classic, isn't it, I suppose? Yes, it is. And by the way, the drum break in the middle was a cock-up from me. just to let you know. I was supposed to do a 1-bar drum break, but I got into something I couldn't get it out of. And it ended up being what it is on the record.
We'll come and play that tonight.
So you'll probably, if you listen carefully, you'll hear me going, ah, in the background. Seriously.
And my question for Vince, out of everyone that was in the Larry Parnes stable, who was the one person that didn't make it that you thought it was an injustice?
Dickie
The
Pride.
pride.
Yeah.
He was the best in the stable, including Billy. He didn't have, he was a totally different artist. You know, it's apples and pears, you can't compare. Dickie was by far the best singer in the stables. Dickie was just, he was a big band singer. I mean, what was that album he made?
He did a big band thing, didn't he?
Pardon? Pride Without Prejudice. It was fantastic, but the trouble was with Dickie, he liked both rock and roll and swing and jazz and the big band stuff. And when the jazz guys, like the Scotty, Ronnie Scott, Tony Hayes, and all those sort of guys, used to play in the West End, and various tours, and probably even around the provinces, Dickie would do his best to go and he would sing with the big bands, and that's what he loved most. But unfortunately, when it came down to drums, you'd probably be surprised that us lot, Billy did, but us lot, we didn't do drums at all, did we? Nobody.
I used to do Aspros and...
Yeah. And that's what happened, seriously, we didn't do drums at all.
Lemsip.
Yeah, Lemsip, yeah.
And a pint of beer. Right, Lemsip, a pint of beer, sleep like a baby.
Even Bill did it at the beginning, because Bill and I used to have parties. When Barnes was away, we threw parties in the penthouse. But what used to happen was, Dickie would go to these big gigs, and all the jazz boys were on heavy stuff, like people like Phil Seaman were on main liners. I mean, you know, Phil, greatest drummer.
Yeah, best jazz drummer in the country at the time,
Yeah.
yeah, without doubt.
But Phil would always go on stage high as a kite through Harrow. And I remember seeing him once in a place called Shane